Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samueli. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. And it is time now for our Monday afternoon our time, live stream. And so hello, everybody who has joined us. Welcome. Really happy to see you. And how are you, Peter? Is the winter beginning to hit you?
Yeah, about 15 minutes into this, the sun will be down. Okay, and but there's a little bit of a chill in the air. But we're getting a little bit of what for me is like the perfect weather. A little bit of a breeze. You know, you can wear a light coat. That's okay. And there's sunshine. See, when you live in Russia, it's sunshine. It's not temperature. It's sunshine. That's what matters most.
Sunshine is key. Yeah, absolutely. It's not the temperature at all. You can live in cold weather, but you can't live without sun. I think we as humans need sun very badly.
And a lot of people don't know how a real winter works, because a real winter is the snow comes, okay, piles up, they clear it. The key is to keep it a few degrees below zero.
Right.
That way they can clear the streets.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's cold, this is counterintuitive, everyone, but it's when it's cold, the sun comes out. But when it's between that -3 and +3, there's a lot of moisture in the air and it blocks the sun. See, we want it to get like -5, -8, that's okay. Even the dogs can handle it for a short while, but that gives the chance for the sun to come out. Okay, and George and I have talked about it before. I mean, when it gets real dark, it's I guess I'll have one more drink before I go to bed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you really do understand. First of all, you understand the prevalence of alcoholism. You also understand the prevalence of suicide. Why do some countries have very high suicide rates and other countries don't? And why? And countries where they really have very, very long evenings, they strangely enough often have very high suicide rates. So,
well, there was a
correlation
when I was still working, had started working for RT. In the depth of the winter, catch this, everyone. You go to work in the dark, and you come home in the dark. Okay, so when you're at the workplace, you're not obviously consumed by the weather. You're not thinking about it. You're working. But then you get in there, you're all piled up like a Michelin man. You get to work. It takes 10 minutes to get your clothes off. You do your work, and then you do it all over again, and it's like still dark.
Yeah,
as if the sun had never come out. And if you're living in St. Petersburg, God help you. Okay.
Yeah. That. But anyway, Peter, yesterday we recorded a podcast about the upcoming. It was really, just a few hours before the results of the Moldovan presidential election and EU referendum results were known. And obviously, we always intended to discuss this today, and there is indeed much to discuss.
Well, my first reaction is, aw, shucks. Go ahead, George.
Shucks, yes. But the interesting thing is that I was following the counting through the night, and the anti-EU forces were comfortably ahead for the whole evening. It went on and on, hour after hour after hour. 60% counted, 70% counted, 80% counted, 90% counted. Still, the anti-EU forces were 10% ahead. And then, lo and behold, as we moved into the 90s, suddenly, top, creep, the pro-EU forces started catching up. And it was only at the point when 99% of the votes had been counted, 99%. That suddenly the pro-EU faction moved ahead. And then finally, that's it, we won. A famous victory. Take a lap, Ursula von der Leyen, take a victory lap, Charles Michel.
George, there was never, in your mind, in my mind, there was never any doubt about the outcome. Okay.
No, I didn't think it would be this close, though. I thought, oh yeah.
Well, okay. I'll give the theatrics to it all here, but what the reason was that there was this sudden surge of the diaspora voting. They were the ballots that were counted last. I would have thought they would have been counted first, but anyway, that's me. But then that puts into question, well, what about barriers to voting for the diaspora in Russia? The largest Moldovan diaspora in the world is in Russia.
And that's really the key, because as we discussed this yesterday at some length, that there were only 2 polling stations open in Russia, only 2, even though, as you said, it's the largest Moldovan diaspora, and there was a maximum in each of them of 5,000 votes. So altogether, there was only votes for 10,000 Moldovans. Well, that seems just very, very strange. I mean, you're supposed to have the number of ballot papers as there are likely voters, not, well, we just cut it off. We'll say there are 5,000 and then that's it. And anybody who, number 5,001, sorry, tough luck, buddy, you can't vote. So, that obviously just made the whole thing completely pointless. And of course, those voices are being silenced. The only thing is, oh, Russia's cheating, oh, the real fraud, because there was clearly at one point during the evening when Sandu believed that she was going to lose this. And she came out, issued this, hysterical statement about all the fraud, Russia's,
I think there was fraud. Oh, I definitely think there was fraud.
Me too. I think there was a lot of fraud. I mean, anytime when you have an election and one side is comfortably ahead through the night, and then suddenly at the end, you find the number of votes, the exact number of votes you need to put your side over the top. Well,
ask Donald Trump. Ask Donald Trump.
Ask Donald Trump. But that was exactly the case when, the famous case of 1960, because that was really the first time the public was exposed in the sort of the Nixon-Kennedy election, when again Nixon was ahead in Illinois, and then sort of magically in the last minute, the Cook County vote came in, and it was all for Kennedy.
Mayor Daley, how did that happen, Mayor Daley?
Exactly. That's right. The graveyard vote came in late, So whenever that happens, this is bogus. But nonetheless, this is a huge embarrassment. Even with this result, this is an embarrassment, given the amount of that was poured in from the EU to get this. I mean, this is they went really out on a limb on this one. And so and they could only scrape through by a handful of votes. So I just want to show you this is an article in, let's see. Yeah, let's see if we can see this. This is from the Radio Free Europe, which actually gave a reasonably, nothing like as hysterical as. Can you see this, Peter?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so here we have the headline in this Radio Free Europe: Moldova's razor-thin EU yes vote puts President Sandu in a tight spot. And then it says, by calling for the referendum, the Soviet-born and Moldovan and US-educated Sandu was hoping to capitalize on EU support and largesse, as well as the political momentum from having beaten back rampant inflation, part of the energy diversification away from Russia. And then, but after a nail-biting vote count into its final minutes, Sandu and her allies snatched victory from the jaws of defeat, despite consistent majority support for EU integration that hit the 63% mark in a poll just weeks ahead of the vote. So that raises nice questions about the polls. What were these polls doing, which clearly wildly exaggerated.
Well, I don't think that they did extensive canvassing in Gagauzia, our favorite place in the world.
Exactly, or Transnistria. Yeah. In the simultaneous presidential election, which he was widely tipped to win, Sandu came in first, but socialist challenger and former prosecutor general Alexander Stoyanoglu did better than expected, and voters catapulted him into a presidential runoff in 2 weeks' time with 26% to Sandu's 42%. So oddly enough, Radio Free Europe doesn't even put the immediate adjective and pro-Russian, Russian-backed. So you always have to tell us, oh, this is the bad guy. He's the one that's being backed by the Russians.
I don't. There's no evidence that I know of that
No, none at all. I mean, it's just like anybody who doesn't like what you stand for must be pro-Russian.
Yeah, well, that's why Sandu, the president, is going into a runoff. She tore a page from Zelensky and just banned media outlets that were not pro-EU.
Completely.
Okay?
Completely. Okay?
This is the EU's candidate, everyone. A president that is banning media that she doesn't like.
Exactly. And she's banned all Russian language media, even though very substantial.
Everyone in Moldova speaks Russian. Okay?
Right.
Everyone does. Like everyone in Ukraine did.
Yeah, that's right. So while the yes vote in a referendum clears the way for the irreversibility of the European course in Moldova, the slim margins of the win are not a strong legitimization of Sandu's EU aspirations. The tight results could potentially herald a new period of political instability and protests, which call for recounts and allegations of fraud from both sides. Yeah, you think? I mean, so pull something out in the last minute, and then this uncertainty.
Just back up just for a second.
Yep, okay. Sure.
All right, everybody, I want you to put this in your mind right now. The irreversibility of the European course. Just, you said it posted on your computer. Keep going, George, because I want to go back to it. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. This uncertainty and potential instability makes Moldova even more vulnerable to meddling from Russia. Meddling. Even in this article, you've already described how much meddling there was from the EU and from NATO and from the United States. So even more meddling from Russia, which still regards Moldova as its near abroad, and where it keeps troops in the breakaway regions of Transnistria.
Well, it is in its near abroad, George.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, is that is that an untrue statement? It is in its near abroad.
Right. No, that's right. And of course, what happened, as we were discussing yesterday, the key issue is, of course, not Moldova in the EU, because Moldova is not going to be in the EU.
That's why I ask everybody to remember that phrase. Keep going, George.
That's right. So Moldova is not going to be in the EU. I mean, it's
not ever. Not ever.
Exactly. It's a ridiculously poor country, and it's just it's just going to be a net drain on the EU. The issue is it's a vital piece of real estate. We talked yesterday about this massive military base that the United States is building in Romania. It's going to be its biggest base in Europe, on the European continent. The biggest base the Americans are going to have will be in Romania. And that's the hub that is going to get the weapon systems into Ukraine via Moldova. Moldova is part of the NATO infrastructure. That's the only real value of Moldova to the West. That's why they've put in so much resources into winning these votes, because they want to use Moldova. I suspect the people in Moldova know this. They realize that this is exactly their only interest is this as real estate.
I bet they do, George, because think they border Ukraine.
They border Ukraine.
Okay, irreversibility of European integration. That's code for NATO. That's right. That's just not EU. Oh, okay, maybe they'll be in the PACE or all these other ridiculous joke European institutions that do nothing and just suck up resources. Yeah, Moldova will be all over that kind of stuff. But it's never going to be in the EU. But the only purpose for this whole exercise is to soften them up for EU, NATO membership. That's what it's all about. The alpha omega of this. You think they care about the people of Moldova?
That's right.
The only country that does care about Moldova is Russia.
That's right. Exactly. And that's right. It's a key part of the NATO hub. There it is. We want to control completely the western coast of the Black Sea. I want to basically just bring it completely under NATO control. And that's the usefulness of Moldova. And this is why they've got so worked up about this. Of course, the same with Georgia. Why are they so preoccupied with Georgia? These are two tiny countries And they got all these idiots at Politico and the Guardian and everything. Oh, democracy is about values. It's about values. No one cares a damn about democracy or values. They want it as real estate. This is where NATO wants to plant its flag. But the other interesting thing is, so this vote, this tiny, they're going to say, hey, that's it, we won, fantastic. But what did this vote mean? This vote means that they're going to enshrine it in the constitution, Moldova's EU aspiration. Now, it used to be the case that when you want to make a constitutional change, you need a big majority. You don't tinker with the constitution unless you get 2/3 of the vote. I mean, that's basically, if you want to, this is a big thing. It's the fundamental document of the state. So, you need an overwhelming majority. You don't get it by getting, a few thousand votes. That's it. Now we can tinker with the constitution.
Yeah, a few thousand votes in the last 15 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. The last 15 minutes. That's it. Now let's rewrite the constitution. Now, again, here's this sort of this. We're democracy. These are the democracies of the European Union and NATO. We have democracy. Values. It's our values. What kind of a democracies are these? What kind of values when you start tinkering with the constitution, when you win by a few thousand votes, and as you say, you call it in the last few minutes, after already 99% of the votes had been counted, and mysteriously you find these votes. Now you're going to rewrite the constitution, and this never comes up. It's just like all of these countries that were pushed into NATO, not one of them was ever put to the referendum. There was never a referendum in any country as to whether you want to join NATO. The only one that had it in Hungary, Hungary is the one country, and they didn't get enough people to come and vote. There was only a 40% showed up to vote. So that should have been canceled. The referendum should have been canceled. Not enough people showed up, but well, let's forget about it. And they never tried it again. They had it in 1997. It was never tried again because they knew they would basically lose every single referendum.
The real issues that were on the ballot was rampant corruption, part and parcel of that part of the world, high cost of living. As far as I understand, inflation is not really under control. I don't know what Radio for Europe is talking about, okay? And the extreme energy dilemma that this current government has put Moldova in. So, I mean, people were voting on that as well. It's one of the reasons why she wasn't pushed over the top. She's not a popular person. No. I mean, she is definitely the West's figurehead, placeholder in Moldova, and she's going to keep writing that. Okay, yes. I suppose that the mandarins in Brussels will obviously accept the outcome, but just as George said, I mean that came at a pretty penny. Okay, a pretty penny to get that. Okay? And considering, I mean, this will never be reported in Western media, is that there were only two polling stations in Russia where the largest Moldovan diaspora is. Okay. Right. George read the numbers yesterday. There were like 12 in Italy, 17 in France, and went on and on. And so this is just election engineering and meddling and basically just plain fraud. I mean, if you don't allow people to vote, it's fraud. Okay, and the whole referendum should be canceled just because of
Absolutely. That. Exactly. Exactly. That is absolute grounds for. I mean, only 10,000. There are a hell of a lot more than 10,000 Moldovans in Russia. So
I can walk to my corner store and probably walk by 3 or 4 of them.
Exactly. And only having 2 polling stations, which of course in itself acts as a disincentive. I mean, because if there are only 2 polling stations, people are not going to go because no one wants to line up for 20 hours and not even knowing whether you'll get in because they have to close at 8 p.m. or whatever. So you don't even know whether basically there'll be time for you to go in and cast your vote. So it was obviously a total fraud. And you're absolutely right. That alone should be the basis for canceling. But of course, it's not going to be canceled. And on the contrary, Ursula von der Leyen will declare that the Moldovans have voted for a European future.
Okay. Well, let's go. This is going to be. It's going to be contentious in Moldova for a while because both sides have accusations of fraud, which I think probably both sides were involved in it. Okay, it's Moldova of all places. Okay, but what does this mean? Is Russia going to put on the brakes on Moldova because of this vote? No, I don't see why. They know as well as any rational person that knows that the EU membership is, people will be living on Mars before that happens.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, the cue is European integration. Well, that's a code word for NATO. If that starts happening, Moldova is going to start feeling the squeeze.
That's it. Yeah. Immediately. Now, the next part is, of course,
what can I do? What can I do? It's security.
That's right. That's right. But the next part is, of course, the election in 2 weeks' time for the second round of the presidential vote. So Maya Sandu, she got 42% of the vote, and then this guy, the one who's going to be her opponent, he got 26%. He's from Gagglers. So he's a Gagglers.
Our favorite place, because I love the way it sounds.
Exactly. EU is gonna go in with everything. I mean, they're gonna pour in so much money and resources into that second round, and they're gonna ban whatever opposition newspapers still exist. That will all be outlawed. And these days you can outlaw anything just saying it's Russia. Oh, it's pro-Russian. Oh, it's just simple.
If it walks opposition, talks opposition, it's opposition, and you will be deleted. Okay,
you will delete it, exactly. Oh, this is just Putin's poisonous propaganda. So that we're just
there's no evidence that there's any Russian involvement at all. Tons and tons of accurate. What was it, George? 1,000 people were trained in Moscow. Why can't you train them in Moldova?
That's right. But we've seen these cases before when they move in a huge way into an election, and they essentially just bribe. They bribe them. Just you got to get her over the top. And I imagine they'll pull this off. I mean, I think they're going to do it, and then she'll again get whatever 51% or whatever.
Everyone, George is right. They're going to, there's the sunk cost dilemma. They've already put in so much money, they have to keep doing it. You can't back away now. Yeah. But the problem is, it's not solving Moldova's problems.
No.
And see, this is going to create even more social tension because, when you're in a difficult situation and you have the franchise, this applies to the West as well. High inflation, can't afford a house, groceries are on your mind, groceries, energy, what do I spend? At least you have the vote. And then when they take the vote away from you, then what do you have?
Yeah.
What do you have? The system will lose more and more legitimacy the more Sandu pushes Moldova in a direction that, whereas it's clearly, I'll even be generous here. It's at least 50-50. Okay, at least. Okay.
Right.
So, but if you don't solve the problem of corruption, of high cost of living, the energy dilemma that they face, you're in a lot of dangerous territory because the system will break down. Of course, the NGOs and all of that, they'll be in the nice cafes and all of that, and everything is swimming for them. But it's going to get worse and worse for everybody else.
Right. No, that's right. But this is what NATO and does and EU do extremely well. They move in to a country that's very divided, very, very divided nationally, by religion, by language, by history, because they're kind of cobbled together in all sorts of rather haphazard ways.
Thanks, no Stalin. Thank you.
Exactly. So they move in. I mean, Moldova was. I mean, they kind of cobbled together. They got a bit of Romania was part of it, and so it was an artificially created state. And Moldovans themselves. I mean, they rejected the name of their language. Their official language used to be Moldovan. Now they say no, the official language is Romanian. So that very identity that they got, the Soviet identity, it's Moldovan. This is Moldovan language. No, it's Romanian. Of course, needless to say, they of course throw out Russian as an official language. I mean, that's part of the course, even though most people there speak Russian.
Well, maybe kids under the age of 16 don't. But I mean, if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, they're not only they speak it, they're fluent in it.
Right, exactly. And they did the same thing, of course, in Ukraine. So they move in, and then they, of course, are extraordinarily divisive because they push for only one course of action, which is this, the European NATO integration, Atlanticist integration. And those who don't want it will, they just get crushed. And this is exactly what NATO and the EU did. I mean, the first model of that was Yugoslavia, where they pushed for the secessionists and then and went against the Serbs. So in other words, the breakup of Yugoslavia took place in the face of opposition from about 50% of the population, mainly the Serbs, but not only the Serbs, who were opposed to the breakup of Yugoslavia. But nonetheless, that's what NATO pushed for. And of course, they've done the same thing in Georgia. Again, Georgia, very, very divided country.
Yeah, but the Georgians have learned some lessons apparently.
Right.
And when is the Georgian election, George?
That's next Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
either Saturday or Sunday. Yeah.
Well, on next Monday we'll be talking more or less the same thing, but the Georgians have gotten it looks like they've gotten kind of a grip on it. Okay, again, it'll be conveyed in Western media as Georgian versus Western versus pro-Russian forces. There are no pro-Russian forces in Georgia at all, but they'll paint it that way.
That's right. But that's it. But again, it's very interesting because here we have this creature, this Maya Sandu, who's totally a Western. She's a total Western creation. I mean, she spent the time in Washington. She worked at the World Bank, and then she was just simply parachuted in to into Moldova. That's it. You will be the leader. They just got to create these figures. Well, that's it. We're going to.
She is a U.S. citizen, isn't she? I think she is.
I don't know. I know she's a Romanian citizen.
I'm not sure either, but I think she
is.
Yeah,
but she worked for the World Bank, so I mean, in Washington. So at the very least, you had to have had a green card. And so, but they hoisted her in just like this. The woman we always talk about, the president of Georgia. I can't pronounce her name. The one who was actually born in France and who worked for the French diplomatic service. And they decided, right, you will be president of Georgia, but I don't speak Georgian. That doesn't matter. We'll just bung you in. And so she spends all her time vetoing legislation proposed by the Georgia Dream Party.
The majority.
Yes, that's right. That's right. She vetoes it, and they, of course, because they are the majority, they overcome her veto. But she continues to make all these pronouncements, and again, the Western media will just repeat all her pronouncements as if it matters anything, because basically she doesn't have any popular support. So, this is just exactly the Western model. And of course, again, Moldovans know this is the person, Maya Sandu. And of course, the problem they have is when the West comes in and backs very strongly a candidate, then you also know that if you vote the wrong way, you will be made to suffer. I mean, it's like they know that that the West is going to come down on you like a ton of bricks if you don't vote the right way. I mean, they've done that in Georgia. I mean, look at all the people in Georgia now who are under sanction, well, for their crime of proposing legislation that Washington and Brussels don't like. That's it. That's it. It's not just like, you're supporting Russia in Ukraine or anything. No, it's not even that. It's just you're supporting legislation that we don't like. So they get sanctioned.
In Moldova and in Georgia, there isn't a Russia card to play if you're on the ground. It's in Brussels. In Washington, they think that it's the figment of their imagination. But look, a lot of people in Moldova, as George pointed out, they see what's going on in Ukraine. They don't want that to happen to them.
Yeah,
they see someone like Zelensky that's sacrificing his entire country and allowing demographic collapse.
Right.
I mean, Moldova's got a lot of problems, but it doesn't need that kind of stuff.
Right. No, that's right. And of course, if Moldova, and of course, as we discussed yesterday, and this was pointed out in that article that we talked about by the former Hungarian ambassador to Moldova, he said Moldova is currently being used as a transportation hub to get weapon systems from Romania into Ukraine. So that means Moldova will be in the front line. I mean, whether it's a member of NATO formally or it isn't, if the war escalates, then it will be clobbered. So Moldova knows, hey, this war is very bad for us. We're going to get absolutely clobbered. We're actually right there as a target because weapon systems are going across our country. And, Hungary, which is a member of NATO, has said, no, you're not going to use our country as a transportation hub. You don't transfer weapons through Hungary. But Moldova, which isn't a member of NATO, supposedly neutral, hasn't said no. And then, again, with the Sandu regime, yeah, sure, you can use our territory. Well, that means you become a target. That means if anything happens, you will be a target, and you get clobbered. And even though it's obvious that Moldovans don't want to be involved in this war, I mean, it's got nothing to do with them.
Well, actually, you have Ukrainian young men escaping to Moldova. Okay, don't you think Moldovians think, yeah? Why? A lot of people don't try to get into Moldova. I'm sorry, no offense, Moldova, but it's not a desirous destination. But if you're gonna go into the meat grinder, of course it is. So that's this was all very predictable. What George and I are going to keep our antenna up because they're going to talk EU, but then no, it's going to be NATO.
That's right.
Anyway, it's usually NATO membership, then the EU.
It's always like that. It was always like that. There has not been one case where it was EU membership followed by NATO. It was always the first thing is NATO, and then you get your EU membership if you're lucky. But again, it's only if you're lucky, because when other countries have been inducted into NATO, they never got the EU invite. Like, say, Albania. Albania is a member of NATO, but Albania never got into the EU. Macedonia, or rather North Macedonia.
They're working on it. They're working on it, George.
They're working on it, exactly. Montenegro.
No, don't you think, Joe, you and I know perfectly well that, you let us in NATO, we'll do our best for the EU. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. Promise made, promise broken. Okay.
Right, exactly. So no, of course not, because all these, North Macedonia, Montenegro, Albania, these are all key pieces of real estate. They have no interest at all in any of the people. Or they think, oh, well, this is nice. We're going to get involved in the EU. We're going to enjoy EU standards of living. Soon we're going to be living in the lap of luxury like Germans and Dutchmen. No. We're going to use your ports. We're going to use your air bases. You use your infrastructure. Build some motorways. Get people out of the way so we can transport NATO troops and very quickly.
That's the SOFA agreement. Okay,
that's right, exactly, the SOFA agreement. But what about the EU? I mean, I thought we were going to be living, like Germans, smoking cigars and driving around in BMWs. No. Forget that.
All right, do you want to move on?
Yeah. Now, the other thing we can talk about.
I just want to talk a little bit about McDonald's, just real quick.
McDonald's. Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to talk about that as well, but I want I want to talk about it in a slightly different way, because the way that
George and I don't rehearse this. Okay, so I don't know what George is up to.
All right, but I want to talk about the aspect of it where Trump claims that Kamala never worked at McDonald's, and now the New York Times and the media have gone all in to say that what they usually say: Trump is lying. Trump is lying. How dare he suggest that Kamala did not work at McDonald's? And so the New York Times wrote this long article which is, hey, obviously, this is all completely evidence-free what Trump is saying. But if you actually get through the article, he's saying, well, you still haven't provided this one bit of evidence to suggest that she actually ever did work at McDonald's. So I want to just show how typically how the New York Times frames these stories as saying,
good segue. Good segue.
Yeah. Okay, but what did you want to say about McDonald's?
Well, I just think it was a piece of perfect retail politics. I mean, it's absolutely astoundingly good retail politics. You go first. Okay.
All right. Then let me get this. I can find this. Okay. That's not it. Always very difficult to do these things. Can you see this, Peter?
Yep.
Okay. So here is the headline to the New York Times story: Kamala Harris and McDonald's, a college job and a Trump attack. Donald Trump has claimed without evidence, it's always this, without evidence, that Ms. Harris never worked at the fast food chain. Her campaign and a friend say she did.
Well, before you go to the next slide, this is the New York Times, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Well, where's the sentence? But we do have the evidence.
Well, like exactly her campaign. Okay, well, her campaign says it, but that's really the point. And it's very interesting that here's the New York Times, which devotes a considerable amount of resources to show that Trump is lying in claiming that Kamala Harris didn't work at the McDonald's. Well, then you would say, all right, well, it's very hard to prove a negative. Then prove the positive. Just simply say, yeah, here's the evidence that she did work at McDonald's. I mean, it shouldn't be that difficult to track down some record of her having worked at McDonald's.
The tax man knows where you work, everyone.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. Anyway, it goes on. Birtherism meet burgerism. Vice President Kamala Harris has recalled her stint at the Bay Area McDonald's 41 years ago in introducing herself to voters, a biographical detail relatable to millions of Americans who have toiled in fast food restaurants. Again, wonderful kind of lyricism. The toil in fast food restaurants. But did she? They said, but former President Donald Trump has repeatedly accused her of inventing it, lacking a shred of proof. So he's the one who's lacking a shred of proof. He has charged that she never actually worked under the Golden Arches, recalling his earlier false claim that President Barack Obama was not born in the United States. Mr. Trump's latest allegation also appears to be false. So that you say also appears to be false. Appears. Okay, well, let's see. I mean, then you're waiting with bated breath. So now you're going to triumphantly present her tax return or something, some record from McDonald's. Yeah. That she was here. She was on the payroll. And then it says, whether a presidential candidate actually flipped burgers as a college student is a far less serious allegation, of course. But Mr. Trump's seeding of doubts about Ms. Harris's story, while insidious and outside the lines of traditional fair play in politics, advances the goal of portraying Ms. Harris as a fraud. I love the one about the traditional fair play. You mean when you call Trump an agent of Russia, that you're essentially saying that he's a traitor, that he's working for the Kremlin? That's part of the traditional fair play in politics.
Well, if she introduced it into public discourse.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, there's a really big difference there. All right.
Exactly. That's the point. She's the one who brought this up. So it wasn't Trump didn't bring this up. She brought this up that to show her kind of her proletarian roots, that she worked at McDonald's, which itself is a stupid claim to make. I mean, what the hell does it matter what you did during a holiday? I mean, everyone, when they're at school or at university, do some retail work or something during their holidays. That doesn't mean that you know something about proletarian life. Anyway, so then it goes on. Oh, Did I go back? Yeah, hold on, yeah. So yeah, then we go to the next slide, which is it exploits the fact that her life story is not as well known or as well documented at this late stage of the campaign as those of most presidential nominees have been. Why that is?
This is pablum. This is ridiculous.
It is pablum. And it gives voters who may already harbor doubts about her another invitation to dismiss her and doubt what she says. Well, again, you think, well, fine, then just present the evidence, and then and then we can show what a scoundrel Trump is. I mean,
it's very much like what Trump said at the Al Smith gathering. It was one of his best lines. I don't know who wrote it for him, but Tim Walz isn't here tonight, but he will say he was.
That was a good line. That was a very good one.
That's a really good line. Okay. But I mean, again, George, I mean, this is just so many words and wasted time. She said she worked there. It's incumbent upon her, not Donald Trump.
That's right. I thought you were going to say about that other line that he said, that this is the first time that jokes are going to be fact checked. So,
well, also about Tim Walz, he said, what was it? He said, I never understood tampons in a men's room. Then I met Tim Walz. Oh,
yeah. And it goes on. Ms. Harris's campaign said that she was an employee of the McDonald's on Central Avenue in Alameda, California in 1983 during the summer after her freshman year at Howard University, working the cash register, French fry station, and ice cream machine. It has provided little information beyond that. This is it. That you're going to be very careful. What is the it that she's talking about? The it is the campaign. So it's the campaign has provided little information beyond that, including how long she worked there. Okay. She also mentioned her job at McDonald's when she ran for president in 2019. Okay. Then it says, as with birtherism conspiracy theory, this one puts Ms. Harris and her aides in something of a bind. Tracking down pay stubs or other documentation from so long ago would be a difficult task for almost anyone. Really? I don't know. She's a presidential candidate. She's a vice president. I'm sure McDonald's would go the extra mile to find some information from 1983. I'm sure the records are there from 19. It's not that long ago. It's not like 1920s.
Well, I think that restaurant is still there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, yeah.
It didn't burn down. Okay. Anyway, I don't know if it's a corporate store or it's a franchise, but in either case, you would keep records. That's not that long ago.
Exactly. Well, the McDonald's would keep records. I mean, it may well be a franchise. I think most of them think franchises.
But franchise people are even more fastidious, George.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Tracking down pay stubs or other documentation was so long ago would be a difficult time. McDonald's corporate representatives have ignored media requests for corroborating information. Ignored them. They just ignored them. And trying to knock down Mr. Trump's claims could also breathe life into them. Well, why are you writing this story then? If you're worrying about breathing life into Mr. Trump's claims, why have you decided to assign so many reporters to this story? I mean,
this article it does more than plant a seed of doubt, doesn't it?
Exactly. The campaign did not make any of Ms. Harris's friends or family members available for interviews about their recollections or experience there. Well, why is that? But okay, then none of them was made available. All right.
How many people were on this article, George? Did you?
I think quite a number.
Yeah. So, but they couldn't call Harris's friends or family.
That's right. Exactly. So, we were led right from the start to tell us, well, Trump is a liar. Trump is lying. We're well into the article, and we still haven't found any evidence of Trump's lies. So then it goes on. But the New York Times interviewed a friend who had known Ms. Harris as a teenager and remained in touch with the family for years afterwards. Rhonda Kagan, a close friend of Ms. Harris's when they attended high school together in Montreal, said she recalled Miss Harris having worked at McDonald's around that time. So I said, oh, this sounds good. So what, and then it goes on, answering questions by email. Miss Kagan said that Miss Harris's mother, who died in 2009, had told Miss Kagan about the summer job years ago. So that's her evidence. She said it was Kamala's mother who had told her about this. So this is already some way distant. It wasn't even Kamala who had told her about this. It was Kamala's mother allegedly told her, but Kamala's mother unfortunately is dead, so we can't really get any further with this story. Ms. Kagan said she herself had also worked at one of the fast food chains, many franchises in those years. That's what us regular folks did, she wrote. Still, she indicated that it had not been a frequent topic of conversation for Ms. Harris. We didn't talk much about our McDonald's days back then. So this doesn't seem like that's their sole evidence for this. That's basically the sum total of her evidence, in which it's basically secondary. It's kind of hearsay. She heard it from
pay stubs. The tax man knows.
Yes,
the tax man knows.
The tax man knows. The tax man knows. They used to have tax records in 1983. It's not that long ago. And then it goes on. Miss Harris's stint at McDonald's may be one of the few blue-collar jobs she has held, according to a copy of her resume from 1987 when she applied for a summer position at the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. So it's maybe one of the few blue-collar, but the point is, it's a very craftily constructed sentence. It says maybe one of the few blue-collar jobs, but as we find out, she doesn't mention McDonald's on this resume. So it may be, one of the few blue-collar jobs she has held, according to a copy of her resume from 1987, but there's no mention of it on that resume. Her other work experience listed on that document includes an internship with former Senator Alan Cranston of California, a student assistant position in the Public Affairs Office of the Federal Trade Commission, and the summer clerkship at a San Francisco law firm. So, they all seem very different kinds of jobs, from flipping burgers or flipping fries at McDonald's. The resume does not mention her time at McDonald's, a fact that the Washington Free Beacon, a conservative news outlet, used to suggest that she had never worked there, and which seems to have propelled Mr. Trump's claim that she made up the job. The summer of 1983 is not listed in the resume at all. It is also unclear, of course, why Ms. Harris would have included a fast food job on an application for a legal position. So why bring up this 1987 resume? It's not mentioned there. And now you say, well, yeah, she's applying for this job for a legal position, so why would she mention a job at McDonald's? Well, so this is completely irrelevant. And you brought up this resume, which has nothing to do with anything other than to suggest that there's a resume and there's some serious.
God bless you, George, because I didn't understand why we were talking about that.
Well, that's it. It's very hard. This is typical New York Times. It's often, you have to really read it quite carefully, because it's very slippery and slimy in the way it makes insinuations and leads you to think one thing. But if you read it more carefully, it's actually saying something different. I mean, that takes skill. That's not an easy skill to acquire. Anyway, so I looked at this Washington Free Beacon story, and the headline, I did fries. Kamala Harris claims she worked at McDonald's, but she never mentioned it until she ran for president. Did she really toil beneath the golden arches? And it says, Harris's resume a year after she graduated college makes no mention of McDonald's.
And but she mentioned it running for president of the United States.
Exactly. 2019 is pretty much the first time she ever brings this subject up about the work in McDonald's. And says Harris's work at McDonald's, which allegedly took place at a franchise in the California Bay Area the summer after her freshman year in college, is a recent addition to her carefully curated life story. For decades, Harris never mentioned it, not on the campaign trail, nor in 2 books. It's absent from a job application and resume she submitted a year after she graduated from college. Third-party biographers did not write about it. Not until Harris ran for president in 2019 and spoke to a labor rally in Las Vegas did she mention the job, telling the crowd that she was a student when I was working in McDonald's. And then he goes on, the job goes unmentioned in both of her memoirs published in 2010 and 2019. I didn't realize that she'd written two sets of memoirs. And then 2 biographies written about Harris make no mention of the job either. A 2021 memoir by Stacey Johnson Batiste, Harris's lifelong friend who grew up with her in California, does not mention McDonald's anywhere in the text. And then Dan Moraine, who authored Kamala's Way, told the Free Beacon he was not aware of her job at McDonald's. And then the Free Beacon also...
So the New York Times still insists that Donald Trump is lying.
Exactly.
They have no evidence that he's lying.
Exactly. And that's how they start this. So we showed this without evidence. Well, there's quite a lot of evidence here, because if he's basing it on this story seems pretty devastating. The Free Beacon also obtained a copy of Harris's October 1987 job application for a law clerk position in the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. On that form, Harris, who was in law school at the time, listed several jobs, including the month-long clerical job at a stock brokerage. In a section that asked her to list every position she held in the last 10 years, McDonald's is absent. We go back to the New York Times. In subsequent years, Ms. Harris talked so little about her long ago job at McDonald's that even some of her friends and close aides did not know she had worked there. Now, notice what the Times has done here. It's assuming that this really happened. She talked so little about her long ago job that even some of her friends and close aides did not know she had worked there.
See how they just kind of weave it in there. So by the time you're in this part of the article, they've already validated that she did.
Exactly. They've already said, oh yeah. And what's so instead of saying, oh well, Trump said it without evidence, then what is your evidence that she had worked there? It's simply just Harris's claim. You're now accepting Harris's claim at face value, which is not kind of what you're supposed to do as a journalist. You're supposed to examine her claim as against Trump's claim, and then evaluate the validity of the claims. But here they're not doing that. They've already assumed, well, she's obviously telling the truth, even though none of her friends and close aides knew she had worked there. They just didn't know she had worked there. She also did not mention the job in her memoir, although she talked extensively about her time at Howard and the various jobs mentioned on that old resume. The first time Ms. Harris appears to have prominently brought up her summer job was during her first presidential campaign in 2019, as she joined striking McDonald's workers on a Las Vegas picket line calling for a $15 minimum wage. And then that's pretty much the end of the story. What is interesting here is how the Times, it's a very, very slippery way in which the thrust of it is Trump is lying, but they presented no evidence that Trump is lying. They presented no evidence that Harris worked there. But that's it. That's and this is after they've done an extensive investigation. I mean, they did this with a view to refuting Trump. So they sent all these reporters, get this evidence, and we're going to destroy Trump.
Yeah, but they don't present any evidence that Harris was speaking the truth.
No, not at all. It's an assumption. They've made that assumption that Harris is speaking the truth.
Well, this segues very well into everybody knows that, George and I do this enough that I've been very disappointed with the Trump campaign. However, it seems that they have straightened themselves out. The Al Smith appearance was overwhelming success. I think that he didn't really understand how it works, but he pulled it off. I mean, he pulled it off astoundingly, actually.
That's right. Yep.
We kept hitting Chuck Schumer on the shoulder. I just love that. He's mortified. Michael Bloomberg is mortified during the entire thing.
Yes, he looked really weird.
Oh, he looked like he was going to have a heart attack.
Yes, and but interestingly, what happened there was that he was really being grilled or made fun of by the I can't pronounce the comedian's name, the one who was the MC. The comedian, because he was constantly having a go at Bloomberg. Said, hey, come up with some more money. We're trying to raise $10 million here. Surely Mike Bloomberg can whip out his checkbook and give us some more money. And
yeah,
Bloomberg
he can
smile at that.
He can easily do that. Okay?
Yes.
Yeah, but and then Trump's visit to McDonald's, which I think is one of the greatest pieces of retail politics I've ever seen in my life. When he put on the apron, he looked like he worked at McDonald's.
Yes.
And this is I'm not boosting for Trump here. I'm not. Objectively, I'm looking at retail politics. I don't want to be misunderstood.
Right.
But
yes,
he's interacting with people that work at McDonald's. Did you see the power difference? I didn't. It's perfectly at ease.
Yes.
Put the fries over here. Here's the timer. Here's the salt.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. No, I agree.
This is retail politics at its best.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then at the window.
Yes. At the window. That was good. Yeah. Because other politicians have done that. They pose. They put on the apron, and
they
then
usually put on the hard hat, George.
Yeah, exactly. They put on the hat, and then they put the ladle into the soup pot. And they put it on, and then once the photographers have taken their pictures, they take off their apron, and they're out of there. He didn't. He kind of hung around. Hung around chatting with customers and handing out these the French fries. And the interesting thing is that he actually kind of likes this food. Say all the other politicians, that they never eat this kind of stuff. They're not going to eat burgers and fries, but he actually really this is the food that he enjoys. So again, there's nothing really that he didn't come across as phony. With others, it always comes across as phony. Obama was always doing these things. He always looked phony.
There's one thing I don't know if you noticed, but when he was putting the fries into the paper container, he said something. Again, it's absolutely vintage. It didn't touch. It didn't touch my hand, because he's a germaphobe. Yeah. He's an absolute germaphobe. Okay.
Yes.
So all of these lurid stories about Trump and women, I don't believe it. I simply don't. Okay.
No, I don't. No,
I don't. It's all made up. Okay. And then, shaking a germaphobe, shaking hands with people in the car, and the genuine response is that, Mr. President, he loved it. Okay. Right. And then talking through the window, but the critics say, but the McDonald's really wasn't working. It was a fraud. Yeah. There's been 2 attempts on the man's life. Okay.
Yes. That's right. And he was right. There was the CNN. I think the headline on this was a bizarre photo op. Now this is the new word. This is the new buzzword in the media. Bizarre. Ever since Tim Walz, Tampon Tim, coined that expression. Oh, they're weird. Trump and Vance. They're weird. And everyone loved. Oh, weird. Oh, neat. That's really neat.
Tell me, George. So tell me what's going on here. It's weird that Donald Trump actually put on an apron, and at least the footage I saw was working the fries and working the drive-through window. Right. But is that weird, or is it weird someone that claims to have worked there that there's no evidence that she ever did? So which one of these is weird?
That's right. I agree. And the whole thing about with Harris, but I think it's ridiculous, first of all, to claim some sort of proletarian roots because you did a summer job. I mean, everyone's done a summer job, but that doesn't mean that you have some kind of a feel for the life of the working class because you've worked for a few weeks in some retail job or
So you could buy a couple of pairs of shoes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so absurd. I mean, again, I mean, that's part of a thing. Oh, I grew up a middle class kid. It's just it's so phony. But the thing about this weird, and ever since the weird, and so every time Trump does or Vance do anything, the headlines are always, oh, this was weird. This was bizarre. And you probably saw was I think last week. When he did one of these town halls asking questions, and then a couple of people fainted. So there's one person fainted and was attended by doctors, and then he continued answering questions, and then another person fainted, and as the doctors had to attend the second person, and then he kind of said, okay, well, we're not going to do any more questions, and then they started playing music. And basically, he didn't really do anything. He was just standing around, while the music was playing. And then, Trump is really weird. Trump, this was a bizarre event. They didn't do anything music. But imagine if it had gone on, this Q&A had gone on, and the third and the fourth person would have fainted. I mean, obviously, this room, there wasn't enough air conditioning. It's just too hot. So people were fainting. So I think he did the reasonable thing is that, look, we can't really have a third person fainting. We need to bring this to an end. The media didn't really explain this. And he said, oh, this is really weird. He just stayed on the stage and listened to music. That was
but he was on the stage. He was taking questions. Okay,
right. Yeah.
He was in a stuffy room. I mean, who's doing the retail politics here? Right. All right, and that's why I texted you earlier today. Is he closing this deal? Because it looks like he's closing the deal to me. Okay, because I was very, very critical of the campaign. Every time you and I talked about how much I thought this campaign was off the rails. No, the discipline is back in a big way. And instead of just he's done enough rallies. And I know people want to say they saw Donald Trump. They want to tell their children they saw Donald Trump, and they want to tell their grandchildren that they saw the president of the United States. Okay, I get that. Okay, but this whole McDonald's thing talks. It's part of the myth of Donald Trump, the contradiction of the billionaire that feels comfortable with a Big Mac. I mean, this is something mystic for people, and that's part of his secret, okay? As someone pointed out to me earlier today, it's something interesting to think about, and I'm not making a decision on this right now, but, Donald Trump he was a masterful businessman and an awful politician. I'm thinking it's beginning to turn around. I mean, he's got a political touch that George and I have rarely seen in our life. No,
absolutely. He really, it's very rare to have somebody like that. Who has that, and even back before he was a politician, the one thing you knew about Trump is that he had a popular touch, and then he was just a figure in popular culture. But the one thing he always had, he knew how to get to the newspapers. He knew how to make a story. There was always something or other was going on, and suddenly Trump thrust himself into the story. And so the one thing you always knew is that Trump has a feel for the popular culture. He has a feel for what television is interested in. He has a feel for what newspapers are interested in. And he was always, there's some talk show. Oh, what can we do? Well, let's call in Donald Trump. He's always good value. And he was, bring him on, and he was always good value. And he was able to, translate all of that into politics. I think somehow it probably had something to do with his father. I mean, I think he did spend a lot of time on building sites. I think, so he learned to speak to, construction workers.
And he collected rent.
Yes.
George.
Yeah.
Now you got to have people skills. That's like a repo man job. Okay. Yeah. You got to have people skills, real people skills. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't want to overblow this or anything like that, but when I watched the footage, I was just struck, absolutely struck. The authenticity issue again, this duality of the billionaire that is perfectly comfortable with average people, and a couple that was going through the drive-through, I couldn't hear the entire dialogue, but he said, ordinary people like us. And Trump said, "You're not ordinary. You're not ordinary."
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's very good like that. Is that you're not ordinary. I think somebody else said something like, "Oh, it's very good that you spend time with the little people." And he said, "No, I don't consider these as little people. I think they're very big people." And that's a thing. And it's kind of interesting that the Harris, she keeps saying I'm a middle class kid. She doesn't have any of that popular
affect at all. She doesn't.
Yeah. Doesn't have.
It's these people, that. Okay, well, let's just play hypothetical, George. Let's say Kamala Harris did work at McDonald's. Then why did she deny it in all of her CVs? Yeah. Why wasn't it brought up in conversation? So no, she it's. If this hypothetical is right, she's ashamed of her background. She's ashamed of her upbringing. I worked at Wendy's, everyone. I worked at Wendy's for a summer. Okay? I'm not ashamed of it. Matter of fact, I always liked Wendy's hamburgers more than McDonald's. Okay? But that was all I could afford. Right. Okay? Yeah. I worked there and I ate there because that's the only job I could get and it's the only food I could afford. Right. Okay, but I'm not ashamed of that. For me, it's a thorny crown.
Right.
All right.
Right. No, I quite agree. I mean, I think anytime people adopt this whole tone of oh, I was really poor and I was sort of had this very, very, really humble background. Oh, I didn't really this was how hard my childhood was, and then you kind of find out, well, you've really grossly exaggerated. But what you do by essentially lying about your upbringing is you're kind of shaming your parents. I mean, your parents probably felt that they had given you a very nice upbringing. They probably felt that, hey, I gave you sort of a comfortable and a nice upbringing, paid for education or whatever, paid for your holidays. They don't particularly care for you then to belittle it and pretend that this was some very poor, you barely were able to somehow meet your bills. Oh, you had to go without meals. I said, no, you never went without meals. You always had, 3 full meals a day. We bought, nice holidays for you, bought your bicycle, on your 10th birthday and whatnot. So it's really kind of disgusting when people do that and lie about their upbringing, lie about their childhood. They're actually essentially demeaning their parents, demeaning everything that their parents had done for them, because ultimately that's what parents try to do. They try to provide as good a home and an upbringing as possible. So that's why it's always sickening when politicians try to play that game of lying about their upbringing.
Well, I'm always disgusted about these, particularly Democrats, that just talk about their humble origins and all of that. They're in tune. They have a affinity for working people. Yeah, it's all bullshit. That's not true. Yeah. Look who's in Congress. Right. They're all millionaires. Okay, right. A lot of it inherited too. Okay, most of them had to step up from the day they were born. Okay,
that's right.
Their legislation reflects that. They despise middle-class people, working people. 2 hurricanes hit, but we got money for Ukraine. That's all right. You need to know about these people. That's right. I was a middle class. Oh God, give me a break.
Yeah,
that's right. J.D. Vance. There's humble beginnings for you.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I mean, Trump has never pretended to be anything other than that. I mean, he came from money. He came from money. That doesn't FDR never pretended that he somehow I had a really humble upbringing. No, I mean you were fortunate. You did well in the lottery of life. You were born into money. But don't lie about it. Just be upfront about it.
But FDR, I'm glad you brought him up because at the time, FDR was a class traitor. That's how he was seen by his peers, as a traitor. You have to remember he had polio and he went down to Warm Springs, Georgia. It's a very interesting story. It gave him because of the salt, it gave him the illusion of being erect, of standing up. It didn't help him with his polio at all. As a matter of fact,
Right.
it only got worse. But it gave him the feeling that he could stand up. And for the psychological impact on him was so great that he actually bought it. And his wife was not happy about it because it was in the Deep South. It was Jim Crow, and she just hated going down there because she just thought this is odious, this social system. But FDR, that was his real first contact with other polios of all classes, of all races. And he had, I mean, there are accounts where there'd be a young girl with polio and she just, Franklin, come over to me. She didn't know he was president of the United States. Just called him by his first name. And he had a touch for downtrodden people that these patricians at the time could never even imagine and wouldn't even give it a second thought. Okay. And why am I saying this? Because Donald Trump was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, but George is right. Probably was at construction sites. He's collecting the rent. He sees how people live. And people like Kamala Harris, just with all their power and ability to get away from those people. I don't want to be around those people.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And so when she does this, these events, hanging out with celebrities, hanging out with people with money, posing with Alex Soros, who kind of looks like a real dweeb. I mean, the idea that anybody wants to pose with Alex Soros, I mean, the old man was bad enough, but Alex Soros, that's like...
Huma Abedin sees something in him.
Well, I think I think I can see what she sees in him. I think this is the guy. But that's the thing, and of course the media love it. Oh, look, she's there's Beyonce and another celebrity. No one likes that. They don't like you hanging out with celebrities. That basically it's clear from her. It's clear from Obama. It was clear from the Clintons. This is the people they really want to spend time with. Yeah, I want to go to these nice parties. I want to, hang out with glamorous people. I want to hang out with people with money. They have the best parties. They travel in the best circles. They travel in the nicest planes. That's the people I want to hang out with.
When Barack Obama had his 60th birthday shindig, the only middle class, working class people he came across, well, they were the servers. Okay, they were the truckers. They were the caterers. Okay, and they had to wear a mask, and the guests didn't. Okay? Talk about a new serfdom, everyone.
That's right. They had to wear masks. Yes, we don't want your germs all over us. Yeah. No, that's right. But Obama was quite skilled at concealing his utter contempt for ordinary folk. Bill Clinton was also quite skilled at concealing.
Very skilled.
Hillary Clinton was not, and Kamala Harris was not. You can see when Hillary Clinton blurted out her famous thing about the basket of deplorables, everyone knew that now you're speaking from the heart. This is exactly what you think. It just said, basket of deplorables. Yeah, that's it. That's who you are.
When Hillary, I guess it was 2016 campaign, she was in Iowa someplace at a country fair, obligatory, and they all went, even if you're an East Coaster, you come and you put on a vest and a cowboy hat and all. It's just so ridiculous. Trump never did that, by the way.
No,
he never did.
Never done that.
Always wore the suit, always the red tie. But when Hillary was there, Bill was with her. And at these county fairs, like they have these contests. Who's got the biggest tomato? Who's got the biggest? It's kind of cool. This is my biggest onion. My son and I.
That's right.
Hey, look.
That's right. Biggest.
It's a curiosity. Okay, why not? Okay, and so. So they have this guy with these corn cobs, and they're showing it to Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton looks right. Hey, how'd you do that? Okay, he's looking at it. Like special fertilizer or something, or was it extra sun? I don't know if Clinton was talking out of his ass or not. Okay, but it seemed genuine. What did Hillary do? Hillary went into the back.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly.
Literally didn't want to get close to it.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Exactly. But when you see her in pictures at parties, then you can see she really gets quite enthused about being at parties with celebrities. Like you saw that famous picture of her with Harvey Weinstein before the disgrace of Harvey Weinstein. She's kind of all over him. She's got her hands all over him. Hey, these guys are. This is Hollywood. This is money. This is real Hollywood money, and that's
If I had gone to a party like that, I would have to take a shower afterwards.
Yeah. So. Yeah. That's right. And of course, this was at the time when everything was already known about Harvey Weinstein. It was because everyone in Hollywood knew exactly what Harvey Weinstein was up to. They knew exactly how he operated, how he used his power, essentially, to pay for sex, with he made all sorts of promises to his starlets, and this is what he did. Everyone knew about this, and yet she was still kind of all over Weinstein.
Well, I don't want to get myself into trouble here, but a lot of starlets knew the score, George. Just leave it at
that. I quite agree with you. I mean,
standing in front of your mansion with your armed security and dogs, okay, gated community, coming out and with your jewels. Oh, he abused me. Okay, yeah, but he gave you 5 films, an Oscar, and you have a bank account for your grandchildren.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I couldn't agree more. And it has always been thus at Hollywood. This was the way it was when they had all these really ugly guys, the sort of ugly man who kind of founded Hollywood. And they always saw it as this is what they did. You did the shooting of films in the studios that took place in the morning when the sun was up. In the afternoon is when they helped themselves to the female talent. And this is, these are really ugly, physically ugly guys, who were the kind of, head of this studio, head of that studio. They were the big time producers, and they helped themselves to the help. And, this was pretty much true of all of the sort of the great female stars of Hollywood. That's kind of how they launched their careers. So it was always that. And Weinstein thought, hey, yeah, this is neat. And you're absolutely right. The starlets, they knew exactly what the score was. And you have to say, in his defense, he delivered. When if he promised them a part in one of his movies, he delivered on the part. I mean, from then on, it's up to the starlet if she can turn that into a successful. There's no evidence that he lied about giving them parts and then not giving them parts.
Yeah, it's a whole sordid relationship, okay? And a plague on all your houses, my opinion, okay? Okay, looking for the moral high ground in a relationship like that. Come on.
Yeah,
it's a pretty rich ask.
Yes, they yeah. All right, let's see if there's any interesting comments. So we have our friend DJ. Always good to see you, and thank you very much for your generosity. And then a friend in the east, on the west coast. So thank you so much. And let's yeah. So 60 cents. Yeah. So thank you so much. And we it's always nice, when we have West Coast. It's really and lost where I was. So I saw, it was good, apropos of nothing. I saw a poll the other day. It was held in Germany, and the Germans were asked who did they think would win the American election, and something like 73% of Germans believe that Kamala Harris will win the election. It's a reflection of just how out of step the German have become. I mean, to think this, it just shows how little they really know about America, and how much, you know, they're essentially immersed in their wishful thinking. I mean, it's they've got themselves into this frame of mind. They absolutely hate Trump. They love Biden. I mean, you know, he was in Berlin a couple of days ago, and he got this Order of Merit. I think it was something like the highest possible order you can get in Germany. So he got this Order of Merit from the German president Steinmeier, and for what? This is, you know, what he's done to your country. He blew up your bloody pipeline, and you're giving him this? I thought, well, at least it's not.
Well, you know, George, I guess you will get, and our viewers will get the historical analogy, historical reality, is that Germany's becoming like East Berlin.
Yes, right. That's right.
It's a very weird Stockholm syndrome that the European elites have. Okay.
Yeah.
Because with every passing day, they become more and more divorced from their electorate, from their citizens, and like wanting to go to the most trendy party. I mean, once you get into the European elite, then you're in a club, and you want to do everything you can to maintain that status. Okay,
right.
And if it means, you know, giving the people that gave you power in the first place the short end of the stick, so be it, because that's why they want power in the first place. They climb on the backs of people that have the least amount of power. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely abhor these people.
Right.
You know, they're deplorables not only in the U.S. Okay.
Well, it really is. It's this the mentality is you know, they're very anxious. You know, Trump is somehow going to be an isolationist. You know, and so you know, and what are you really worried? What's really worrying you that Trump might do? Well, he might cut off aid to Ukraine. Well, how does that affect you negatively? I mean, surely you would be thinking, won't it be a good thing for Europe if this war came to an end? I mean, that again, you know, that's a big if Trump will actually do that. But that's what they think. That's what their real objection to Trump is, that they think Trump is going to end aid to Ukraine. And you think that, oh well, I mean, Biden said, I think he tweeted out the other day is that somehow, you know, without the U.S.-German relationship, you know, we would be in for instability. You know, this is a guarantee of stability. What stability? I mean, there's never been a time since 1945 when there's been this amount of instability. Stability. We're ensuring stability in Europe. And this is kind of the mentality. Somehow, well, Trump will bring instability. Yeah, you mean bringing a war to an end is bringing instability? But that's the mentality. What is it? That's their main objection is to Trump. That somehow he's going to pull the plug on this war, which I'm not. It was. I don't know if you saw this. I mean, Trump gave this interview into the Wall Street Journal, and let's see if I can show you. He was at the Wall Street Journal the other day. Let me see if I can find that. And it's quite all right. Okay, let's see. So this is the Wall Street Journal editorial page, which is not really particularly well disposed towards him, and he's not particularly well disposed towards them. And having some difficulty. Here we go. And so I think obviously they were asking him about foreign policy, and not coming up. So Now here we are. So he's saying, that Vladimir Putin knows it too in Mr. Trump's telling. So he's now quoting him. This is quoting what he said to the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal. I said to Putin, Vladimir, we have a great relationship. I got along with him great. He's a different kind of a character, I will tell you, much different than anybody under. I knew him very well. I said, Vladimir, if you go after Ukraine, I'm going to hit you so hard, you're not even going to believe it. I'm going to hit you right in the middle of freaking Moscow, I said. We're friends. I don't want to do it, but I have no choice. He goes, no way. I said, way. I said, you're going to be hit so hard, and I'm going to take those effing domes right off your head because, he lives under those domes. So no, the thing about this,
you believe that, George?
I don't believe it. No,
I don't.
No, I don't believe it. But what I thought was interesting is that he, that this comment, this was just a few days ago, barely elicited any comment at all. You think, according to his telling, you mean you were threatening to bomb Moscow? What do you think Russia would do in response to Americans bombing Moscow? But it generated almost no, because as long as Trump is being hawkish, then that's fine. I mean, as long as you're threatening, to bomb and so on, then that's fine. No problems at all. It's only when you start talking about, well, I might not, do anything for you to a NATO member state. I might not defend you. Then that's a problem. But bombing Moscow, yeah, fine. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Trump cannot be a Russophobe. That doesn't compute for these people. So they drop it. Doesn't make any sense in their equation about Trump. So it just passed by. I saw that. I just took it as hyperbole.
Yes.
Because this goes in line with which something I don't agree with, but that Biden is soft. The Biden-Harris administration is soft on Ukraine, soft on Israel, soft on China, and that plays into that. So when people will ask me, well, so why is Trump doing that? And I say, this is politicking. Okay, this is part of the campaign. All right, it's something. I know American political culture better than any other, and so when I'm confronted with a situation like this, I know how to parse it. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I think that's what's really behind this. But I want to bring this up because I do think it's interesting that amidst all the talk, oh, he's unhinged, he's weird, unstable, bizarre, whatever. This hardly generates any comment, in his telling. You were going around threatening, according to his story, you were threatening to bomb Moscow. Again, I don't believe this because he's never said this before. This is the first time he's ever claimed that he had made these comments, and particularly remember
Ukraine wasn't on that level of importance at the time.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And that's a very good point. It really wasn't. At the time, it looked like this is going to be, some way down the road, it will be resolved. But one thing we haven't talked about yet is, of course, the situation with Israel and Iran. So we're still waiting for the impending attack by Israel, and the only issue that's obviously we're kind of curious about is how big will this attack be? It certainly doesn't look like this is just going to be a pro forma attack, just launching, trying to knock out a few air defense systems and then call it a day. I mean, this looks like Israel is going to be planning a major attack, which will force Iran to retaliate.
I think what's going to happen, George, is that I don't think it can really apply to Gaza outside of wanton destruction of civilians in a refugee camp. But I would surmise is that there's going to be a high-profile action against Gaza, against Hezbollah, against Iran, and against Yemen, all at the same time. That's why it's taking a lot of the planning. The Americans are filling in the empty spaces and all of that. I don't think the United States will be. The United States is going to be the auxiliary. It's going to supply everything that's necessary, the intelligence and everything. But I think this is going to be the mother of all retaliations. Okay. Now, does that mean oil refineries and nuclear sites? I don't know. But all of the talk, you say the administration is talking the Israelis out of it. Just ignore all of that. Aren't you sick and tired of it by now? By now, aren't you sick and tired of this ridiculous, good cop, bad cop story? Right. It's all rubbish. Remember, and this is something George and I have talked about at great length, is that does the United States want Israel to commit genocide? I don't think it wants it, but it's the cost of doing business to make sure that this, believe it or not, I mean, I want everybody to sit down comfortably here. This is also an attack on Russia. Okay, this is part of it as well. Okay, what they want to do is that they want to remake the Middle East, and if it's the Israelis as their proxies, so be it. Oh, the Israelis want to commit genocide. Wow. You have to break a few eggs, don't you? Okay, that's how I look at this, okay? And that's why I think the United States is very much actively involved in this Iran retaliation, is because they want to give the Russians a bloody nose there, too.
Right. Because I think because of Iran, because it's the issue is to weaken, humiliate, and diminish wholly Iran, and therefore Iran's allies in the Middle East. And then essentially to present to Russia a kind of a fait accompli, where you see you don't have any allies here. We're all of the countries that you would regard as somehow allies of yours. We've beaten them, we've defeated them, we've weakened them. I mean, look, if you look at Syria used to be Russia's most important ally. It goes all the way back 1972 when I think the first Soviet-Syrian agreement was signed. But look at Syria today. I mean, you've got the
Syria was a powerhouse.
Yeah,
it called the shots in Lebanon. George and I remember it very well.
Absolutely. But now you got the Idlib area, Turkish occupation. You've got the northeastern part of Syria under Turkish occupation. You have the Kurdish areas, basically protectors of the United States. You have parts of Syria under direct occupation of the United States. They've essentially reduced Syria to a kind of a non-functioning state. And of course, the permanent sanctions regime against Syria. So again, they're presenting Russia with, hey, look what we did to your great ally. And now they're going to obviously try to do that with Iran. So I absolutely agree. I mean, it's not a question of just Gaza. I mean, it's Iran. It's all of your potential allies. They say we are going to demolish and finish them.
I'm in complete agreement with you. But this is the situation that the Biden administration has accepted. They've accepted Israel's geopolitical aims, its agenda. But to go along with it, the Israelis say, but you're going to have to help us out on this one too. Okay.
No, I agree.
The Americans, I don't think, they like, oh yeah, we're for the genocide these people, genocide them. I don't think so. But the Netanyahu and the AIPAC lobby, they said, look, if you want to have hegemony, you want to knock Iran out, an important ally of China and Russia. Okay, you get, this is how the sausage is made. This is the reality, and they've said, okay.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I mean, if you think of, well, what is the Israeli agenda? Well, the Israeli agenda is to turn all of mandatory Palestine into Greater Israel. Basically, just remove all the people, all the sort of the non-Jews out of mandatory Palestine. And, that's the project. And they, they've been moving steadily towards this, the fulfillment of this goal for many years. That was always the agenda. I mean, they seized this territory in the 1967 war and lied about it afterwards. And everyone lied, oh, this is just a security matter. That's the only reason they're occupying these territories. It's just security. So once you can guarantee Israel security, then they will withdraw from these occupied areas. No. They've always intended this mandatory Palestine. Israel got all of it except for these two things: Gaza Strip and the West Bank. That was all, and that's why they seized that territory in '67. They always intended that. When they finally accomplished this, I mean, that may take some time. It's not going to happen tomorrow. When finally accomplish this, then Israel's enablers will say, well, the Palestinians brought this on themselves. I mean, it's kind of their own fault because they refused to, accept, the existence of Israel. They just did it themselves. It's very, very unfortunate, but it's really their fault. Well, that's how they'll live with it. But but you're right. I mean, this is the Israel's agenda. That's not really America's agenda. America doesn't care about that. But America has aligned itself with Israel for what America does care about, which is to have complete hegemony over the Middle East.
An important caveat here, and I think it's something that's not mentioned enough, is to have hegemony, or maybe even more importantly, not allow anyone else to have hegemony. It's also a denying strategy as well.
Well, no, it absolutely is a denying, because once you've removed Iran from the equation, you pretty much have got everything. You've won the prize, because then what else is there? What else is there to counteract the United States? There isn't. And it was always, you basically one by one, you have removed from the scene every state that had been part of the resistance. I mean, remember, just what the situation was in, say, 1970. In 1970, you had a substantial block of countries that were opposed to Israel and were opposed to the United States. I mean, you're talking about, Egypt, to Libya, Syria, Iraq. Well, Iran was actually on the other side at that time. So they had the clout under the leadership of the Soviet Union to press for the two-state solution, and that was the international consensus for the two-state solution. But they've all kind of one by one have disappeared from that coalition.
But the question is also, George, gonna sway the pendulum a little bit back in the other direction. Will it succeed? Okay. And, you and I have kind of mocked Condoleezza Rice's 2006, remaking of the Middle East, the birth pangs of democracy. Well, that turned into a shit show. Okay. What I foresee is that, first of all, Israel is not going to succeed in its goals, but that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be a pandemonium in the entire region. I mean, it's going to, because Israel's plan, it creates existential circumstances for people, okay? And when things are existential, then you go further, okay? Hezbollah has been hit hard, but it's hitting again, okay? And the 180 missiles, projectiles, drones, whatever, they did short work on Israel. So this is why it's a very terrifying moment. I mean, you have Israel backed by the United States that wants to solve all problems, all everywhere at one time. That's what it seems to me. But there are forces that can fight back like we've never seen before. So
they don't have the strength to fight back against
Iran
Israel.
Can destroy Israel.
I don't think they can. I really
think
don't.
I
think that's just.
How many refineries does Israel have? It's
no,
two.
well, right,
Destroy
but
they can't destroy both of them.
Well,
how many ports do they have?
Well, again, we'd have to see that. So far, all they've done is well, so far all they've done is conducted couple of very limited strikes. We don't really know whether they caused any real damage. But to say that they could destroy Israel with these missiles, I just think this is,
George, what does it mean to destroy? Okay.
Well, first of all, even if they hit, first of all, I'm not at all sure that they will be able to break through substantially from the air defense systems that I think Israel and the United States and everybody else is going to provide. But even if they, let's say, they whatever, knock out some refineries and so on, they can be rebuilt. And in comparison with what devastation Israel and the United States can do to Iran, it's much greater. I mean, because essentially Israel has the United States in his corner, and if Iran really, inflicts this kind of a huge strike on Israel, the United States can just simply destroy completely Iran. And I don't think Iran.
That's it.
Yeah, it's like
I mean, we could come to the eventuality, George, is that Israel can be severely damaged. I mean, to the point of barely functional, and they can do that to Iran too. Okay,
right.
That's where it stands right now. I mean, like 3 ports, 2 refineries. I mean, Israel's a pretty small place. And these THAAD missiles, okay, well, you can overwhelm them. I don't know how many projectiles are in each one of these THAAD things, but it's limited, okay? I mean, if you send 500, 600, 700 missiles, George, some of them aren't going to get through.
Right, but I don't think Iran has that capability. I mean, it's like, well, how's it going? It doesn't have that capability to do this. That's why I really don't think it has it. All we've seen so far is a couple of very limited strikes from Iran. I mean, to extrapolate from that and say that they can destroy Israel when the record is that Israel has been kind of pretty effective at destroying its enemies. So I'm just
saying that there's no inevitability here. I mean, I have said every time we talk about this, and George and I disagree about it every time we talk about it, which is good. But when you get into the existential category, then you kind of pull out the stops. What I worry about, to be really honest with you, George, is that Israel will use nuclear weapons. We will go into that area, right?
That could happen.
The definition of existential. The Iranians know that, and I think that's why their reaction through this has been very calibrated. I think they've been extremely careful.
Right. No, I agree. I agree. Extremely calibrated. But ultimately, it's still the case that it's that the goal, Israel's goal, of I think taking over the mandatory Palestine and turning that into Greater Israel, I think Israel will eventually accomplish that goal. It's going to take time. I think it's not going to happen next week or next month, but it will take time. Israel has been pursuing that goal fairly consistently over the years, and I don't see that. We've had all these different variations of resistance to Israel, but they've essentially, they've not succeeded. Step by step, they have been.
Yeah, but George, demolished. Okay, but let's put it into perspective here. The Israeli residents from the north have not returned, and there's no inclination that they're going to return anytime soon. What I worry about, and you said Israel, I think we should be very, very careful to say the United States, because ultimately this is Washington's grand plan. Israel plays a role in it, and it says, fine, we have similar interests here. But while this is going on, we're going to ethnically cleanse Gaza. And sorry, since we're in the game of ethnically cleansing, we're going to do it to the West Bank. And you have a very pliant ally, Jordan. You better start working the Jordanians and the Egyptians, okay? Because we're going to start pushing these people out. But we did to Gaza.
That's right.
We're doing to Beirut, and we can easily do it to the West Bank.
That's right, and that confirms what I'm saying. That ultimately, who's going to resist? Who's going to stop this? Because you have pretty much now Iran. I mean, all the other powers in the region who might have stepped up and formed some kind of a powerful resistance. Yeah, they've all faded from the scene. Iraq's gone. As I say, Syria is barely functioning as a state. Russia is obviously preoccupied now with its own issue in Ukraine. It just there isn't really any factor that can alter this.
George, you keep saying states. What Israel is facing are non-state actors for the most part, and then you have Iran.
All the more weaker are they? All the more weaker. I mean,
Israeli soil is being attacked. George, that hasn't happened before. That has
basically with firecrackers.
Firecrackers, all right.
Firecrackers. Yeah, I mean, they haven't taken any serious damage so far. I mean, I'm not saying we could turn around and say, oh, maybe they will, but so far it's very, very limited in any real serious damage.
But I think we would be in agreement is that we're in an extremely dangerous place right now. Okay, and George and I do our best, not being military experts. Okay. But with our knowledge of history and looking at intentionality, which is a lot of intentionality and a lot of history out there, there's a lot of players, maybe all players, are in this one for broke, and that is a scary prospect.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's
only say maybe.
All right, maybe. I say it's maybe. Again, I mean, we'll see what happens with this at the moment with Israel and Iran. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I think we're in a very dangerous situation, and that's why it's so bizarre, the kind of fantasy world that so many of the people in the West live in when they award Biden this order of merit, the highest possible order given by Germany, and somehow it's celebration of stability, that somehow Biden is stability, and you got two terrible crises, largely the work of Biden. It was the Biden administration in both cases were only too happy to fuel these wars, did nothing at all to stop them. On the contrary, it helped keep generating them. And the Germans, they give him this award. I mean, it's total, and what do the Germans say? Der Spiegel, the real threat is Trump. I mean, this is what's going on right now, and the real threat is Trump.
No, but this is a celebration of neoliberalism. This is a celebration of empire. This is a celebration of hierarchies. That's what this is all about. When you think about it, George, because this administration effectively only has 21 days or something left. Okay, I mean, for those who don't know, after the election, it's the administration technically has power, but power seeps away very, very quickly, leaving in the hands of some very dangerous people. George, what I find really fascinating in looking at the Biden administration, you can't fault these guys for not being ambitious. Okay, I mean, the Blinkens and the Sullivans and the Newlands, they thought that we got at least 4 years to shake this place up. And boy, did they do it! It's amazing.
Yeah. No, that's right. So from the beginning, I mean, think about everything that they did in Ukraine. I mean, this is a methodical plan, and we always knew this. That once all these creatures came back to power, all the Victoria Newlands, all the people who were involved in the Maidan coup. It was obvious they were going to go for broke. Everything was left undone during Obama's second term. Everything is left undone. They're going to try and get it done now under Biden, and then
and particularly a Biden that is not always there.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And so they went for broke. Absolutely. But these were really kind of very, very extreme people. But there they are. There was no real resistance to it because ultimately there isn't really any kind of an entity called Europe any longer. I mean, there isn't any Europe now. I mean, this is just simply NATO land, I think, is exactly what you have to call it. I mean, you just bits and parts of this territory called NATO land. You don't have any, there is no Germany anymore, there's no Italy anymore, France, it's just NATO land.
George brings up an excellent point. I think that's exactly how the Pentagon looks at it. It's not countries, it's bases.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you're not going to get any resistance from the ground, not at all. And I think for George and I that have looked at these things for a very, very long time, that's one of the most astounding changes of our lifetime. I can remember 67, 73, I'm looking at the Middle East. What do the Europeans think? Norway is playing a leading role in, being an intermediary with the PLO. Remember all those things? It was, what do the Europeans think? And even a lot of American foreign policy personnel, they would say, the Europeans are a little bit more methodical. They're a little bit more practical. They're a little bit more careful. We heard this all the time growing up. Okay. On.
You're absolutely correct, because particularly during the 1973, the Yom Kippur War, when the United States made the massive airlift to send arms to Israel, Europe said you cannot use our airspace to send these weapons to Israel. So the United States had to go around Europe, because Europe said, no, you cannot use our airspace, because we Europeans are even-handed in our policy towards the Middle East. We basically are, we adhere to Resolution 242, which is that both sides need to come to an agreement. And therefore, if you send arms to Israel, you're taking one side of this conflict. And Europe said, no, we're not taking one side. We want to maintain our even-handedness. It's unthinkable now that the Europe would ever take that sort of position, which is, hey, we have to be even-handed, the two sides here, and we're not going to take Israel's side. That's all gone.
Just think about it, everyone. And you can, look at the writings of Norman Finkelstein. Look how much money the European Union and European organizations pumped into Gaza. The European Hospital, I wonder why it's called that, okay? And, they put, the schools, infrastructure, a lot of things that the Israelis were not happy about, but they had heft. They had some pull then. And now these same European countries just watch all of that being wantonly destroyed, and not a peep, not a word from these people.
Nothing. Exactly right. And in fact, it's even worse than that, because what's happening now is that Israel essentially, they go in and they pummel Gaza. They destroy building after building, hospitals and schools and everything. Israel is not going to provide any funds for reconstruction. No, there's no reconstruction money coming from Israel. So somebody's going to have to come up with this money for reconstruction. And so they turn to the Europeans and said, "Oh, you come here, get your checkbook out, and pay for this reconstruction, because we're not paying for it." So that's so again, Israel does this, and then somebody else has to foot the bill. And the Europeans say, "Well, yeah, all right, we'll do it, because we're in favor of the two-state solution. So I suppose this helps the two-state solution. So we're going to pay for this buildings that Israel has destroyed." And I think, as Norman Finkelstein pointed out, they're not even going to be able to get the concrete or the cement into Gaza, because of course the moment the issue is of bringing cement into Gaza, they say, "No, we can't do that, because they're going to start building tunnels. So no cement for you. So how are you going to rebuild Gaza if there's no cement?"
How are they even going to remove the rubble? And that could take decades.
Right.
It could take decades.
Right.
When I lived in a different part of the city a few years ago, and they demolished an old building, an old factory. George, they were moving slabs of cement out there for one building for a year.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly
and what we see going on in northern Gaza they're doing what I predicted they would do. They're pushing the entire population out. If you don't move, you'll have no water, you'll have no food, and you'll die. Okay?
Yeah.
And they're getting away with it. Speaking of the Europeans, as they watch on, what's going to stop them from doing it to the rest and to the West Bank? The West Bank gets forgotten a lot, but a horrific amount of violence is going on there right now. You have these vigilante settlers, armed to the teeth, and they're saying, this is our moment. Come on, this is our moment. This is part of our entire Zionist ideology. Why should we be restrained at all?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And they're doing that in the West Bank. It's not getting a lot of publicity. And incidentally, Israel is also pummeling Syria quite hard. So they kind of try to eliminate Syria in any way as a kind of a conduit for getting any weaponry and missiles to Hezbollah. So again, one other aspect of Syria's diminution is that Israel just simply goes in and bombs whenever it feels like. So
there's a double whammy with that, because what George is referencing here is that the major roads connecting Syria into Lebanon have been destroyed for two, right. And it has a double whammy here. So no arms can get in and people can't get out.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah. Anyway, I think our time is up. So we had a very, very good discussion. So thank you very much, everybody who's joined us. And we'll see what happens within the next few days. So
everybody keep score. Keep score.
Exactly. Keep score.
But if I could just say one quick blurb for us, okay, is that George and I we disagree sometimes, but I think for very important, nuanced reasons, okay, because we're obviously in the same area. Let me use a metaphor. We're on the same page. But when you're even people that appear to be on the same page, there can be a lot of differences, and they should be shown. They should be accented, okay? Because there are other enterprises out there that it's just a mutual admiration society that doesn't help you think.
No, exactly right. Exactly. You get just very one-sided, and unfortunately, that means that too often they're proved to be wrong. And so it's we through our exchange of ideas, we try to get as close to the truth as possible. So that's what we try to do. And some people get a little upset when we start getting a little annoyed or whatever, terse with one another. But that's part of our exchange of ideas. So
that's how we wouldn't have it any other way, guys.
Exactly. So anyway, thank you very much. We will be back next Monday, same time. So see you then. Till then, all the best. And remember, if you like the Gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon.